So obviously, the first one and the key one everyone thinks about is a traditional gallery. And clearly, we are in a transitional period as far as commercial galleries are concerned. Here in Indianapolis, which I would assume is similar to a lot of other cities, we have essentially lost all of our commercial professional galleries since the 2009 recession. There was one gallery that remained in a few nonprofit spaces. That's the reason we opened our gallery, is because we really had lost everything. So what we've seen replace that are pop-up spaces, alternative spaces, and a lot of artists just kind of going it alone on their own. So at this point, I would say, even though definitely a transition period and galleries don't mean what they used to, it still is a very good idea, and perhaps the ideal situation, if you did have a gallery that you trust, instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to go out on my own. And a lot of people do that. The model certainly is changing, but there are lots of ways that you can go about selling your work through your studio, online, through consultants. But in the end, a good gallery is very valuable to have. So, some of the things that you need to think about is this gallery in a major market? If you're fortunate enough to get a gallery in a major market, that can be a national source for you. That's amazing, and you would probably have an exclusive contract with them, and that would be great. That doesn't give you a lot of flexibility to do things on your own, to work with other groups and things like that, but it often is worth it because they will be able to elevate your overall exposure and access to buyers that you would have no other way of reaching. So it really is worth it in the end, I would think. Now, in my experience, if you can find one of those larger galleries in a major art center area, if you can't find that, rather, it does seem to be valuable to have two or more regional galleries. This is what I'm seeing with a lot of our artists here in Indy. The ones that are really successful, they will have one gallery with a regional contract out on the West Coast, one with a regional contract down south, and then that leaves them the Midwest. They can sell work out of their studio. They can be really involved in their local community. So that gives you a lot more flexibility. So that's kind of an alternative for, if you can't get that major art center gallery, which is really kind of hard to come by these days. So one of the things that you can look to is your local arts service agency, kind of like the Arts Council. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute also. But you can find a lot about what galleries exist in your area, what other artists are doing in your area through an organization like that. I know one of the questions that came up in the deep dive was something about, well, if I have a contract, an exclusive contract with a gallery, does that limit what I can do out of my studio? And yeah, it does in a way, but the gallery always wants you to be, making work and selling work and having people to your studio and all of that kind of stuff. It's just you've got to have a really strong relationship. It's got to be built on trust and information. And so if you have that, you can still have studio visits and do everything that you do now just with their guidance. So it's just a really, again, a strong relationship. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes too.